Metagame Monday, where I look at popular team, its usage tips, its combos on a team, its matchups against the rest of the metagame, and how to beat it. So today I wanted to take a look at archetype on rise right now, from what I'm seeing. It is Mimikyu Calyrex, good stuff. So generally, I'm gonna go over the alternatives to the team later, but Mimikyu plus Calyrex is a new combo I've seen a lot of people use on a high ladder to some great success. So actually EV spread doesn't really matter, but I like defensive Mimikyu. More on that later. So why Mimikyu? Why is Mimikyu so efficient at its job? Well, first off, it can only get faken out since it's a ghost type, but it is a ghost type that does not fear Calyrex Shadow Rider. And since Calyrex Shadow Rider is most of the time the fastest Pokemon in the field, and Astral Barrage doesn't go through the abilities like Moongeist Beam did for Lunala, Calyrex Shadow Rider is unable to get past the disguise. Will Astral Barrage only break the disguise, and with some luck you should be able to take like Urshifu's Wicked Blow, Indeed's Expanding Force next to it, set up Trick Room, and there you go. You're probably gonna win the game against a high-profile Calyrex Shadow Rider here and there. So that is the perk of Mimikyu, being a ghost type that is not feared by Calyrex Shadow Rider. And neither you are really threatened by the Urshifu, which again is kind of like... Well, I mean, Dusclops probably takes as much as you do from Wicked Blow, just because how ridiculously high the defense is. But at least you're not weak to it. And you got some other techs as well, as I'm gonna explain in a bit. So basically, the moveset on, let's take a Babbery Berry. Why Babbery Berry? Well, I like the idea of being able to take the Steel type move after the disguise is broken. Good example would be Tornadus plus Kartana next to each other. Tornadus should be able to pass the Rage Powder from Among Us thanks to the Icy Wind, and then Kartana could possibly attempt to assassinate the Mimikyu with Max Steel Spike, but we got Babbery Berry, which will allow us to take the attack. You actually do not eat the Babbery Berry if opponent's Steel type move is breaking the disguise. So if they're like if they're attacking with two Steel type moves, you should be still able to activate the Babbery Berry on the second one. It also allows you to take Sunsteel Strike or Max Steel Spike from Solgaleo. Actually, Sunsteel Strike only, because Sunsteel Strike is the move that passes the disguise as its secondary effect. And you eat a Babbery Berry and you should be able to survive. Of course, do not count on surviving plus 2 Sunsteel Strike, but you get the idea. Babbery Berry allows you to take that. A lot of people I've seen on a high ladder actually use a Mental Herb Mimikyu, which is a good option, but I got like other plans with Mental Herb Among Us on my team. But just a note, you can run Mental Herb on Mimikyu to absorb a taunt, alright? A lot of people, when they're unable to KO the Mimikyu, might resort to something like taunt, and if you got Mental Herb, their attempt to stop the Trick Room will flop, and you should be able to win the game. And a lot of people do that, I've seen on the high ladder, basically. For example, I myself tried to, for example, taunt the opponent's Mimikyu with Spectre, but unfortunately, Mimikyu just proc the Mental Herb. And I was next to Whimsicott as well, so Whimsicott, underspeeding the Spectre, I could not have went for Moonblast and then Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball would have won first, and then Moonblast, which would not have come even close to knocking out Mimikyu. So Taunt was my only chance, and it flopped because it got Mental Herb. So yeah, this is like generally like Babbery Berry and Mental Herb are the most popular items on Mimikyu from what I've seen. So onto the moveset. Shadow Snake is for possibly going for priority to finish off Pokemon, but most importantly, to self-proc the Weakness Plus on the Calyrex Ice Rider. This is very important since with Weakness Plus to piece Calyrex Ice Rider is just ridiculous. It one-shots pretty much everything in the game. Trick Room for the obvious reasons I've just mentioned. Will-O-Wisp is a great move. Actually, a lot of people do not run Feeny anymore on their physical attacker teams. Good example would be Zacian teams, which most of the time nowadays carry Lapras, but now you can just Will-O-Wisp Zacian for free basically, unless they of course substitute. But again, we are gonna go over that in the matchup section instead. And Safeguard. Why Safeguard? Sometimes the team cannot afford to go with Fanny as a counter to Among Us. So basically, for example, you need to have Mimikyu Calyrex, Ice Rider, Incineroar, and Torkoal, or Mimikyu Among Us lead, and then Calyrex, Ice Rider, and Torkoal in the back. Which Torkoal, Torkoal should be able to underspeed the Among Us, but sometimes if Among Us is already in, it's too late to stop the Among Us, right? So if opponent, for example, late with Among Us, it's already too late. If you did not bring Feeny, the Spore spam is just gonna completely nullify any threat they're supposed to do to opponent's team. So this is why we've got Safeguard. We can Safeguard after we set up Trick Room before Among Us comes in, or if Among Us is already in, we can Safeguard before it goes for the Spore, which I feel is extremely valuable. And other than that, the bulk is kind of random. I don't think, again, Mimikyu is one of the few examples of Pokemon that just, I don't feel could be EV'd for something. It cannot be EV'd for something specific. It already takes what it needs to take, and already doesn't take what it cannot take. So, for example, I believe with this EV spread we take Behemoth Blade from Zacian. Of course, we take Sunsteel Strike from Solgaleo because of the Berry. We probably are never able to take a Mystic Water Spout, so investing into a lot of special defense makes no sense. And like Xenius attacks, Groudon attacks, we can just kinda take that. Dialga Steel Spike, we take that with Berry. On default, actually even without any bulk, if I recall correctly, from my own Mimikyu lettering sessions. But it's like, again, Mimikyu already takes what it needs to, but with extra bulk on defense, it's just like going to be, let's just say, more irritating than it's being EV to survive something specific. It's going to be very irritating with the max defense, so it takes Wicked Blows, Glacial Lens, actually, yeah, I remember the name of the move correctly. Precipice Blades from Groudons, Flare Blades from Incineroars in Sun are suddenly not gonna knock you out, and opponent might be caught off guard with that. So yeah, it's more so of a tech than something specific. So Calyrex Ice Rider, I'm not sure what I'm doing with these EV spreads. It actually doesn't matter. Like, again, I feel Calyrex Ice Rider already carries what it needs to with this EV spread, and it as well survives what it needs to because of its ridiculous bulk. Just look at it. 100, 150, 130. This is incredible amount of bulk Calyrex got. And it's just like impossible to break anyways. But a bit extra special defense, you take Water Spout a bit better, but not by much. I believe Mystic Water Spout never carries Calyrex anyways, so like, it doesn't really matter. But you also, I believe, like, defensive, you're not going to knock out defensive Incineroar even with max Quake for max attack. I mean, you got a higher chance this way, which I think is why I think this EV spread is a bit better, since some Incineroars might invest a lot in its special defense, thanks to all these Calyrex, Shadow Riders, Xenius. You have to EV like almost max special defense to take the +1 max Surfall from Xenius, as you have seen from previous videos I talked about. So having a max attack, I feel, is a bit better, since you got the chance to KO Incineroar, but it's never 100% unfortunately, because they might just go cuckoo and just say, oh, I won't run defensive Incineroar today. I think it's a great idea. Same idea as Mimikyu, right? If you just got if you just want to be irritating for some reason, like I am with max defense here, you might as well do the same for Incineroar here and just reap the benefits. So yeah, that's the idea of EV spread. Weakness plus C for obvious reasons, so we can just sweep the opponent. Glacial Lens is a ridiculous move. As well, like, I've seen myself in a lot of, when I practice with this team, I've seen in a lot of cases, I was not required to go for Dynamax with Calyrex Ice Rider, and I would much rather go for the spread move as Glacial Lens instead of a single target max Hailstorm with 140 base power. Glacial Lens is 130 base power and it targets 2 opponents instead of 1. So it's a much better move than max Hailstorm. So you're not really rushed to Dynamax Calyrex Ice at some moments, and instead it's just better to not Dynamax it because of the spread move Glacial Lens has. So this is a little bit of a usage tip for you. Other than that, high horsepower max Quake is absolutely necessary to break the Steel types and Incineroar. The third move is kind of like, I would say, kind of, you can run Heavy Slam to increase the defense and feel great. Close Combat is more suave for the much more clean cleanups in late game. So for example, you can just like KO Incineroar with +2 attack, and then you can just get +4, and it's just going to be much more smooth to clean up. But Heavy Slam is just also pretty good. As well as Max Knuckle from Close Combat is also better to just kind of like target down the Incineroar switch, and if Incineroar was already weakened, you can actually knock it out on a switch, and then it's... you can counteract the Intimidate as well with it, with Max Knuckle boost. So yeah, it's just like... it depends on what you want to do, really. And Trick Room or Protect in Calyrex Ice Rider's last slot. My preference is to go for Trick Room, since it allows the Calyrex Ice Rider to set up Trick Room in late game, after the first Trick Room from Mimikyu runs out. But as well... but the Protect has its benefits as well, since after it stops after it reverts to non-Dynamax form, Protecting is just ridiculously good move in VGC, as you probably know if you're a VGC player. So it can save you in many situations against like steel types like Zacian. You can just protect and, for example, finish off the Zacian with Flare Blitz from Incineroar and go for like 50-50s, like, am I going to protect Calyrex to protect from Behemoth Blade, or you're going to target down my Incineroar and I'm going to finish you off with high horsepower? It creates like a possible 50-50s that might save you the game. But my personal preference is Trick Room on Calyrex Ice Rider, as like Mimikyu plus Amoonguss is one combination that we can use to set up Trick Room, but Amoonguss plus Calyrex Ice Rider is more immediate and can be used as a Trick Room redirection Trick Room lead as well, which again gives more flexibility to the team. But so does Protect, so it's again kind of up to your choice. Incineroar, this is most standard Incineroar you're gonna ever see on a ladder. So there is better for the cover, Intimidate, Fake Out, Flare Blitz, Burning Shot, ridiculously good utilities for pivoting and gaining momentum next to Mimikyu, because you can fake out, for example, their Pokemon that could possibly break the disguise for Mimikyu, but opponent's Pokemon can't really fake out Mimikyu to break the disguise or prevent the Trick Room. So fake out leads alongside ghost types are most of the time gonna result in your advantage instead of the opponent's fake out leads, because they can only fake out your fake outer and it just loses the purpose as a result. So yeah, this is another great combo you can use to set up the Trick Room. Flare Blades is kind of like for Sun again, to kind of try to KO Venusaur. And Darkest Lariat is actually preferred on this team instead of Snarl. Snarl and Darkest Lariat do very similar jobs on many teams, since they are supposed to just kind of destroy the Calyrex Shadow Rider. But on this team, since you already got such a consistent way to set up the Trick Room, I think it's better to just go with Darkest Lariat. To simply, after you set up the Trick Room, you're going to simply be able to knock out the Calyrex Shadow Rider instead of being able to just cripple it with Snarls. I think it's just... the idea is opponent cannot really... if you get Calyrex Shadow Rider, you just lead Incineroar plus Mimikyu. And you Dynamax the Incineroar so opponent's Max Quake cannot knock it out. And you... Mimikyu also just guaranteed setups the Trick Room and cannot be knocked out because Calyrex Shadow Rider is only breaking in disguise. So it's generally quite a good lead to lead alongside Mimikyu, and it's just better to not run Snarl on his Incineroar as a result. More on that in the matchup section against Calyrex Shadow Rider, but it's generally better to threaten the Calyrex Shadow Rider in Trick Room. Other than that, this CV spread is kind of like standard. I'm attempting to outspeed as many Incineroars as possible with my Fake Out here. And also it's good utility as well in Trick Room, because if you try like Fake Outs turn 1, turn 2 you are gonna Burning Shot second in Trick Room, because the Trick Room reverses the turn order, and you slower Incineroar Burning Shot first, and you Burning Shot the Incineroar switch in, which makes you again gain an immense advantage. So yeah, that's why we run a lot of speed. This special defense investment allows us to take Life Orb Max Quake from Venusaur, and the rest of the spread is put in the defense for better Soul Glow and Zacian counteraction, and for EVs into the attack. Tapu Fini, this is again very standard Tapu Fini. The idea is Tapu Fini blocks Burn and Sleep, and that's it. Really, that utility is just so valuable on this team, that it's just the sole reason we run Feeny. Sometimes we can afford it, this is why we run Safeguard as another counteraction, but sometimes just having more, in more advantageous matchups, it's just better to just be... Well, Tapu Fini gives us more consistent advantage than Safeguard does on Mimikyu, and with more consistent advantage, we're gonna just probably win a bit harder than we would before. There is just not much room for... We pressure the opponent a bit more with Misty Surge than we just do with Safeguard on Mimikyu. Just, that's how Pokemon matchups work. Having more flexibility is just better. Tapu Fini brings a lot of other valuable things to the field. Leftovers plus Calm Mind is great for stalling out special attackers in late game. It just sometimes wins against Porygon 2 without Eerie Impulse. Tapu Fini actually wins with the Leftovers plus Calm Mind plus Protect. And same applies for a lot of other special attackers like Torkoal, I would say Kyogre, of course, with not a lot of Kyogres. You would be surprised by how many Kyogres do not run Thunder, so again, Calm Mind Fini wins against that. So not only it blocks the status elements, but also it allows you to stall out special attackers in late game, which again gives you like kind of more... Opponent has to take care of more things as a result, not only Calyrex, Ice Rider sweeping this guy, intimidating and threatening like a physical, like opponent Incineroar can like win against physical attackers as a result because of the Burning Shot plus Intimidate, if they got like last 2 Pokemon, the opponent cannot switch out and Incineroar can overwhelm the opponent. Tapu Fini overwhelms special attackers, and it's just like, this combo is just very consistent. It is very defensive, it can do a bunch of defensive switching, and it got Intimidate, Misty Surge for status prevention, and as a result it's pretty consistent combo. Double stabs are like bread and butter on Fini, and Protect allows for better stall out of special attackers in late game alongside Leftovers. DV spread doesn't really matter, it's just consistent Fini. Now Amoonguss is again kind of really a self-explanatory Pokemon here. I'm not sure if you are supposed to EV for something specific. I don't think we're gonna take Hurricane plus Water Spread from Kyogre anyways, so it doesn't really matter if we like go max special defense. But the point is, like, this is probably the most consistent way to EV your Amoonguss, again, because the HP should be... The defense should be double the lower defense stat should be double the HP stat for maximum bulk efficiency. Mental Herb is chosen for the Tornogre matchup, as you're gonna see in the matchup section. Regenerator is just better ability, less luck reliant. Spore, Rage Powder, Spore just put everything to sleep, is ridiculous. Rage Powder for resurrection, so you can set up Trick Room more reliably. Glow Smoke for resetting opponents' weakness policies and Xeniuses. Geomancy and Protect for more 50-50 juggling. We can just do some 50-50s, but Protect on Amoonguss, it's kind of a good tool to do that. Arrows with the Bulk is just for maximum efficiency. And Torkoal is also a kind of a niche pick on this team. Torkoal's one job is to murder the restricted steel types under Trick Room, and it does that pretty well, at least attempts to do so. As you're gonna see in the matchup section, the counteraction might be a bit clunky, but it still does the job okay enough, and it's still literally the best Pokemon to do the job of counteracting steel types in late game. It's literally the best one. As Sacred Sword or Behemoth Blade from Session doesn't do all that much. Interruptions are just nutritious, powerful, ridiculous move that just targets the out of the opponent. Heat Wave is more so for after Eruption gets weakened. Earth Power is for possibly removing stuff like Incineroar and Dynamax form if we are forced to Dynamax the Torkoal. Charcoal is for amplifying the power of Eruption and Heat Wave or Max Flare, as you're gonna see later in the video. It's actually very important to get these. I'm not sure if I'm gonna explain it, but the extra power boost against Solgaleo is it's necessary to get the extra power boost against Dynamax Solgaleo, as you're not gonna see, but it's important to do that. I remember Eruption like doesn't do over 50% without Charcoal to Solgaleo that's Dynamaxed, but with Charcoal you do a little bit over, and with Max Quick from Calyrex Ice Rider it might just be enough to knock it out, and that's very important because Soul Glow with weakness policy will do a lot of damage, let's just say. And yeah, that's the job of Torkoal. Zacian and Soul Glow are just too difficult to deal with otherwise. But I still think the matchup is just so dissimilar. Just like against at least Soul Glow, I feel we're just gonna still lose because how advantageous the matchup is for them. Too bad we were playing a 1 restricted format. With 2 restricted, we could have, for example, used a Voltal to thwart the Soul Glow, but oh well. Someone at Game Freak HQ thought it was a good idea to have 1 restricted format. It's gonna be fun, guys. Well, fun and competitive is 2 different things. Anyways, there are like other possibilities what you can have on a team. So Dusclops is one possibility. One possible Pokemon you can use to self-perk yourself as well with Shadow Snake. You can use Rock Tomb to slow yourself down as well. But I prefer to run a little bit more speed on Calyrex Ice Rider so we can counteract most of the Immune Guy, Torkoals that might run a bit of speed. It's better to run, I feel, run a little bit more speed on Calyrex Ice Rider, so run a minimum. Do we actually even underspeed Amogus after single Rock Tomb? I do not believe so. So Rock Tomb is just kind of counterproductive here, unfortunately. Shadow Snake is better for Surprise Element on Dusclops, I feel. But then, what's Dusclops' job? Well, basically, it takes Water Spout from Kyogre with Ice Wind plus Ice Wind from Tornadus. So that is important, actually, believe it or not. And it takes the Steel Spike from Kartanas and many other Steel type moves as well from the Dynamax Steel types like Kartana, Soul Glow, and Zacian. So basically, you ease up the pressure from Mimikyu to take these 2 kind of combinations of attacks, and you can run, for example, Mental Herb on Mimikyu as a result, because you do not care about it. Steel types. Dusclops covers that job for you. Also, it's not a bad idea to run Will-O-Wisp on Dusclops or Haze. Yes, please Haze, because it removes the boost from Soul Glow and it allows for such a much smoother game against them. It's just so much smoother afterwards. After you remove the attack weakness plus a boost. And then you can, for example, go for Max Steel Spike with the Calyrex Ice Rider, and you can increase the defense, and suddenly you are the one that's ahead. Because Soul Glow's Steel Spike does like 30% the Calyrex Ice Rider, procs its weakness plus, and the tables have turned. So Dusclops is great. If you want some alternative Trick Room setter, like for example, instead of Torkoal and Mingus, I highly recommend looking at the Dusclops. It's great in that. Also, a lot of special defense is kind of necessary, so you take the Water Spouts a bit better. I'd recommend running a lot of special defense on Dusclops in this format, just because of the Water Spout threat. Moltres Gallery is like kind of good idea as well, since it counteracts the Soul Glow pretty well as well. Like either you go for Nasty Blood and Max Darkness, then just completely detonates the Soul Glow, although it doesn't deal that much damage because Spectre got Snarl, and it's not gonna really work out that well, as you're gonna say so. But instead, Full Play on Best of 1 ladder is just phenomenal, as you're gonna just go for Full Play, opponent bulldozes next to Soul Glow, and then you just literally munch on the Soul Glow with Full Play. And because you're like, Soul Glow very rarely goes above like more than 40 speed, you're gonna outspeed it and KO it before it can get Steel Spike boost. But again, that can be flawed as well, since if Spectre knows to go to Full Play, it can Will-O-Wisp you for... And yes, Full Play's damage will actually get halved if Moltres is burned, so keep an eye on that. It's not as simple as using Full Play to knock out Soul Glow, but combination of Nasty Blood plus Max Darkness and Full Play as well on one moveset could pressure the Soul Glow plus Spectre to just go cuckoo crazy. So I think this is not a bad idea either, but overall the idea of this set should be enough to just give you enough breathing room against Soul Glow, but with Full Play it's just much harder counteraction for this combo. And Venusaur is like additional, you can use it instead of Imungus and still get like the pick your poison place turn on. So basically opponent can choose to knock out Mimikyu with the 2 attacks, but at that point you get Sleep Powder on their Dynamax or their important Pokemon, and as a result you should be able to just win. And if opponent tries to knock out your Venusaur with super effective attack, they will fail to knock out a Mimikyu, and Mimikyu set up Trick Room, and then Calyrex Ice Rider just wins the matchup. So it is capable of doing these kind of pick your poison plays as well, but the sleep powder accuracy is very shaky, and if you miss the sleep powder turn 1, you might as well just forfeit the game instantly. And in tournament setting, for example Player Cup, where you have to win 7 rounds minimum in a row, sleep powder is gonna miss in some games, and you're gonna lose as a result, and it's not as reliable, I'd say. You gotta be very lucky person to just spam sleep powders and it always working out. And if you're like running it next to Mimikyu, you cannot really resort to its secondary game plan of G-Max Spine Lashing the opponent into oblivion, because you really want to Dynamax the Calyrex Ice Rider in the late game. So yeah, this side also I've stolen for some Mono Highlighter, and I just kinda love it. Better Ball allows for better counteraction of the steel types like Soul-Galization as well. Earth Power is great for Incineroar, and G-Max Spine Lash is just G-Max Spine Lash. But of course, you can run something like Sludge Bomb here, and it's still gonna be very fine. So yeah, these are the alternatives. Let's go over the matchup section right now. And perfect. All right. So basic information podcast. All right. So Tornoga, excuse me. This is my reminder to turn on microphone, because from the second content, while recording the second content, I should turn off the microphone to record the replays, so there's no noise coming from microphone, and I can just like add music without removing the sound from the microphone while recording the replays. It's just more convenient. So this is like reminder after I finish off recording the replays to turn on the microphone. Zapomni is turn on in check. Anyways, excuse me. Calyrex Ice Rider. Alright, back to that. Calyrex Ice Rider plays in a very, I'm gonna say very arbitrary way. I'm not sure what the good translation for what I'm trying to say is, but it does very similar things against very similar good or bad matchups. So like if the good matchup is good, you generally just set up Trick Room and then Shadow Sneak your own Calyrex Ice Rider for the weakness plus a sweep. This is the most simplest way to go for a sweep. But there are, most of the time, there are like obstacles along the way, and the allies, and like the rest of the 4 Pokemon, I mean 3, Incineroar, Feeny, and Torkoal try to eliminate the problems. So, good example would be against Tornauga. I might not give an example yet, but the idea is most likely this is always going to be the same game plan. Set up Trick Room next to Rage Powder, self-proc the Calyrex and sweep. Setups Torkoal is necessary to beat the steel types like Kartana on Tornauga, Solgaleo on Solgaleo teams, and Zacian on Zacian teams. Tapu Fini blocks the Amogus, but sometimes we cannot afford to bring Fini like in this matchup, so we actually have to resort to Safeguard on Mimikyu to counteract that. So this is an additional setup you have to do alongside Trick Room, then Safeguard, and then Shadow Snake. It's more complicated, of course. This is one of the worst matchups, so it's not going to be as simple as setting up Trick Room and then Shadow Snake. Sometimes Incineroar is a better setup and set up Amogus. This is just like rather a lead difference, but yeah, this is generally what you're gonna do. Just these kind of game plans are almost always going to be the similar way. So let's go over one by one and explain the intricacies you have to do in each of these matchups in order to win, and like alternate what kind of moves you have to pick in which order. Kind of hard to explain that, but against Tornadus plus Kartana, you're gonna take Ice Wind plus Max Steel Spike, and then you're going to set up Trick Room. Then you're gonna try to set up Safeguard turn 2. Also, good note, we got Amogus with Mental Hub, so you're gonna absorb 2 taunts from Tornadus. Third one, if opponent Tornadus goes for taunt, you're gonna absorb it. If opponent goes for taunt again, you're gonna again absorb it with another Rage Powder. Actually, turn 1, you could just... No, turn 1 you have to go for Rage Powder because taunt could go in the Mimikyu and that would be game over instantly. But the idea is that you just Rage Powder twice, to set up Trick Room and then Safeguard, and then you wait for your Pokemon to get knocked out. Then you bring Torkoal to fry the Kartana right away, switch to Calyrex Ice Rider, so you deal with the Kyogre in a more practical way. And after everything just kind of and then you just start knocking out Pokemon like crazy, Kyogre will still be able to do like Origin Pulse for 40% percentage and hurt 40% from Torkoal with Origin Pulse, but it still won't be enough, and Calyrex Ice Rider will close combat for to it KO, but still in the back you still got Spore and Mingus, so finishing off Kyogre should be a easy task to be done with Spore on a Mingus plus Calyrex Ice Rider. This is just general game plan. It's more in detailed. I'll talk about it more in detail here. Tornadus plus Ogre Lead is a bit more complicated, since the problem is in the fact that opponent can Iceman plus Water Spout take out the Mimikyu. Mimikyu cannot take the Water Spout, it just cannot. And Iceman goes through the Rage Power direction as well. So what you do is you Spore the Kyogre turn 1. If opponent knocks out the Mimikyu, you Spore the Kyogre, then you bring in Calyrex Ice Rider, and opponent is like, uh-oh, wait a minute. I cannot taunt the Mingus because I got Mental Herb, so Tornadus is going to sleep. Max Knuckle is going in a Kyogre. If I switch to Incineroar, it still increases the attack, and like, at that point you already win. Because Calyrex Ice Rider just wins alongside Spore and Mingus. It's just that ridiculous. Yeah, this is how the matchup goes. Unfortunately, opponent can go for more cunning play and go for Water Spell with Kyogre to just KO the Mingus. The problem is as following. With no Mingus on the field, you cannot set up the safeguard because there is the threat of the taunt. So what I believe opponent will do though is they Dynamax Kyogre. So what you do is Shadow Sneak plus Max Quake with your Calyrex Ice Rider to put the Kyogre below, just to it KO, start to it KOing the Kyogre. And after you just get a Kyogre in KO range, you switch the Torkoal, Max Quake the Kyogre for the knockout, and now the Torkoal should be able to check the Amogus on opponent's team, and you should be able to just safely win with the Calyrex Ice Rider. If you KO the Amogus immediately, Kyogre immediately with Shadow Sneak plus Max Quake because they didn't Dynamax, it's going to be a bit of a 50-50, I believe, because opponent now can, well, if opponent brings in a Mingus, of course this is just going to be catastrophic, because Spore can be going into Calyrex Ice Rider as much as it can be going into Mimikyu, so it's kind of a 50-50 here. If you go for Spore into the, if they go Spore into the Mimikyu predicting the Torkoal switch, and Max Guard plus from Calyrex Ice Rider, or they just go for a Spore into Calyrex Ice Rider because they just don't predict anything. It's kind of up to you, but I still believe the Kyogre kind of has to Dynamax, because I believe they have to have Incineroar in the back just so they can check the Calyrex Ice Rider a bit better. And they have a Mingus in the back, so the best case scenario for them to Dynamax something is the Dynamax Kyogre, I believe. I would play this, I would play like that with Tornado, but it's case-to-case scenario, I'd say. This is one of the hardest matchups, but there are going to be two hard ones yet still. Solgaleo and Dansation, but other ones are going to be kind of a piece of cake, so let's go from bottom to top again. So basic idea is, against Charizard, you lead Incineroar plus Mimikyu. You set up like, you kind of guaranteed set up the Trick Room here, just Parting Shot the Charizard. Then you switch to Calyrex, KO the Charizard with Shadow Sneak plus makes Hailstorm, that's a guaranteed KO by the way, and then you just win the game. Groudon does pitiful damage to Calyrex Ice Rider, so same happens to Venusaur. Venusaur Groudon is like about the same. You switch to Feeny, so you block the Sleep Powder, set up Trick Room, and then you just patiently wait for the Calyrex Ice Rider to switch in to just obliterate your opponent with Glacial Lances. And Muddy Border also puts Groudon into a KO range because the little chip in Sun allows the Glacial Lance to just knock it out. So yeah, that's just the game plan. Venusaur Porygon 2 is a bit more annoying, but the idea is, again, block the Sleep Powder with switch to Feeny, Flare Blitz Venusaur for big damage. Worst case scenario, opponent KOs it with Max Quake plus you KO yourself with Flare Blitz Recoil. Then you switch to Calyrex, and wait a minute. What am I talking about? So switching to Mimikyu is probably better. First off, so you set up the Trick Room, or switch to Calyrex. I don't think it actually matters when I think about it, because if you switch to Calyrex, the Venusaur is still gonna do pitiful damage to you. You KO the Venusaur with Max Hailstorm, and like, wait a minute, what do I do again? And you set up you gotta like, I would probably recommend protecting the Feeny first off, then KOing the Venusaur, and then what they do, like switch to Groudon, that's a KO with makes Max Hailstorm, and I start setting it, and the Finny also starts setting up coal mines so it can deal with the Porygon 2 in late game as well. So again, it's just kind of like, you win. As long as you damage the Venusaur heavily, and then you bring in your Calyrex Ice Rider, Finny plus Calyrex Ice Rider win in Misty Terrain, because there is no threat of Misty Terrain. Like, even Charizard does pitiful damage to Calyrex Ice Rider without Dynamax. It has like Heat Pipe, which does over 50% I believe, but it does over 50%, which means it doesn't do 100%, which means that's another free knockout. So yeah, that's Calyrex Ice Rider for you sometimes. This is a very, I would say this is a very positive matchup. Against Zone Focus setup, I'm going to go over this like in 30 seconds. The idea is that you just set up Safeguard plus Spore the opponent's Xerneas, and he can close Mog it as well. Yeah, and the opponent has no chance. Like, you Spore the opponent's team, and opponent cannot Spore your team, which is just horrible. And even if they got Finny, you can just Glass Mog away the boost from Xerneas. And you set up Trick Room, and then you just go for Shadow Sling plus Glacial Lance, and you just win the game. Xerneas and Sunrelate is about similar. Just go for Spore plus Trick Room, turn to Spore, Safeguard, bring in Calyrex Ice Rider, and you just win the game. Another bad matchup for the Xerneas. You just gotta love Xerneas in this metagame. It really needs the second restricted next to it, because like, I just explained like very simple counter game plan that is just so applicable to like so many other teams, but yeah. This is the game plan against Xerneas. Calyrex Shadow Rider indeed, yeah, I promised to talk about this one, excuse me. Internal plus Mimikyu, indeed, Calyrex Mimikyu lead is just easy. Just Max Darkness the Calyrex Shadow Rider, which, if they go for Follow Me, you will probably knock out the Indeedee. If they go for Helping and Blast Max Quake, you knock out the Calyrex Shadow Rider and they're Dynamax. If they go for Astral Brush from plus Expanding Force, they do not knock out a Mimikyu, we set up the Trick Room and we just win the game. The idea against Whimsicott is that you can fake out a Whimsicott and set up Trick Room. You should be able to win as long as the Whimsicott cannot go for reverse of the Trick Room or go for Encore, but so basically next turn you go for Shadow Sneak plus Flare Blitz and a Whimsicott to not only prevent Encore in the Trick Room, because Shadow Sneak is a priority move as well, and because you're slower in Trick Room, you are going to be able to outspeed it with this priority move, and they will just Encore you the Shadow Sneak, and then you finish it off with Flare Blitz. If they go for Trick Room, you Shadow Sneak to break the Focus Sash, Flare Blitz scale the Whimsicott, and then you just win with the Calyrex in late game. Against ADD Male Calyrex, however, in DD Male caught Imprisoned Trick Room, you just do about the same as I've recommended before. Max Darkness the Dynamax Calyrex, opponent cannot, just like, will have to trade 55% on the 55% damage on the Incineroar for a knockout on its own Dynamax Calyrex Shadow Rider. They will imprison Trick Room to block the protect, but doesn't really matter. Go for a little bit into Indeedee to break its Focus Sash. Great. So next turn, switch accordingly and spread the burn. So basically, if they bring their Urshifu in, you can actually go for Will-O-Wisp into it while max guarding with Incineroar. But you're like maybe saying, David, how do you max guard with Incineroar? Well, you got Parting Shot, which is status move. So you max guard from the Parting Shot, you Will-O-Wisp the Urshifu, and then you just max darkness the Indeedee next turn for the knockout, and like then later set up Trick Room. Calyrex Ice Rider is still ridiculous, plus Finny in the back. So you should be able to just win easily right after that. So yeah, you got a great advantage here, another positive matchup. Dual Screens Dialga, I would say, is another positive matchup. The idea is that you Parting Shot the Dialga and set up Trick Room guaranteed, because you got a Barber Berry on a Mimikyu. Then Shadow Sneak plus Max Quick coverage move the slot next to Dialga. So the idea is to just kill all of the Dialga's friends, and then you knock out a Dialga after you like +3 attack from the Chilling Nai. So yeah, and Dialga does no damage to you because of the -1 special attack, and you do not proc this. The important part is to do not proc the weakness plus of the Dialga. It's important because that it would be able to just threaten you, but now it does not. Also, Calm Mind Finny wins against Dialga in late game because of the Calm Mind. It's just plus leftovers plus -1 special attack. It's too much for Dialga to handle. If they go to Mingus, you can just switch to Finny to just block the Sleeper Spores. So yeah, another great matchup for you. The mirrors. So in the mirror scenario, I very rarely got the Calyrex Ice Rider teams, from what I've seen on High Ladder, I very rarely have Torkoal, and Basically, Mimikyu Incineroar lead is their best bet to try to counteract you. So the idea is you fake out their Incineroar before they can go for their fake out and the Eruption for massive damage. And they set up Trick Room with the Mimikyu. This is their best play. Like, I'm not sure what else could I do. Like, maybe switch to Feeny, but we can just Parting Shot the Feeny and it's like not going to go anywhere because we got like maybe even a faster Calyrex than there is because they might be minimum speed. If you're not minimum speed with this thing. So it's like kind of awkward for them. If they set up Trick Room, you can Parting Shot second after their Incineroar Parting Shot and switch to your own Calyrex Ice Rider. And you get your Eruption still does like maybe even knockout on Mimikyu as well. It does massive damage, but if they got self-proc with Mimikyu plus Calyrex Ice Rider as well, I would probably... Well, from the Incineroar's Parting Shot from opponent's Incineroar Parting Shot turn 2, they will probably Parting Shot in the Calyrex, then you Parting Shot their Calyrex, switch to your own Calyrex, and if they go for Shadow Sneak into their own Calyrex, excuse me, you might be a bit confused now, but if they Shadow Sneak their Calyrex, you switch to Incineroar turn 3 instead of the Torkoal, the rest of it to neutral attack. Sorry if I confused you here, but basically switch to Parting Shot and switch with Incineroar immediately after and just go for Max Knuckles, Max Quakes. It doesn't really matter. I feel like in this matchup, you just should be probably... after lead I recommended you, I'm probably leaving you to your own good instinct of good plays. Because I believe the matchup is very advantageous in your favor. And you should be able to just pretty much win the game. Just because we got Torkoal and the advantage, speed advantage on many of your Pokemon. So yeah, that's like the game plan against Calyrex Ice Rider. So yeah, Solgaleo Spectre. Alright, this is the worst matchup out of them all. Like, almost outlaws, I'd say. But the idea is as following. Go for Amogus plus Mimikyu, set up the Trick Ring turn 1. And they just KO the Amogus turn 1. Turn 2, bring Torkoal in and go for a Eruption for big damage plus Spectrier. Spectrier should be definitely switching to Feeny. And you do over like 70% to Solgaleo. The idea is that the Solgaleo, worst case scenario with a Feeny on a team, they have to switch to Feeny because otherwise the Will-O-Wisp would burn the Solgaleo and like the game plan would crumble apart at that moment. So what do? You Shadow Sneak, you try the Eruption. In case opponent's Solgaleo, for example, goes for Max Guard plus Spectre goes for Snarl, you cover that play with Shadow Sneak plus Eruption as well turn 2. After that, switch to Calyrex Ice Rider, go for Shadow Sneak, and KO Solgaleo with even a +1 Max Quake. Worst case scenario, again, they got Incineroar, but with Shadow Sneak plus Max Quake from such a powerful Pokemon like Calyrex Ice Rider, you should be able to finish off this Solgaleo and then win the game. It's a close game, but like, a lot can go wrong though. Solgaleo can have like tons of special effects for no reason, and then suddenly Shadow Sneak plus Max Quake doesn't KO the Solgaleo turn 4, and like, you just lose the game as a result. But yeah, it's kind of complicated matchup, but like the idea is as simple as set up Trick Room, go for Eruption, try to eliminate as many options, and then bring in Calyrex Ice Rider to just finish up the Solgaleo, and maybe you should be able to pull it off, just barely pull it off. Also, if they lead like Grimmsnarl Solgaleo, you can probably just Spore Spam the Solgaleo, because the Grimmsnarl plus Solgaleo are unable to KO the Amogus, so that's like one little tip if they lead Grimmsnarl. Zacier plus Lapras, boy, so... Turn 1, go for Fake Out Internalization and set up Trick Room, just so you prevent the substitute on opponentization. If they somehow not KO your Incineroar turn 1 with Max K0 from Lapras, go for Parting Shot on Lapras and switch to Torkoal, so they do not get a knockout on a switch-in, and you set up Safeguard with Mimikyu. The idea is there is a huge threat of if they got Amogus, set up Safeguard is essentially this turn because they can just switch it in instead of the Zacian, because like Zacian is probably going to get Parting Shotted here and doesn't do all that much more. So if you see Amogus on their team, definitely set up Safeguard turn 2. Turn 3, go for Heatwave. Alright, this is like worst case scenario, they did not break, switch to Amogus, which is like horrible, but oh well. But with Will-O-Wisp, you just don't, you actually didn't Will-O-Wisp the Zacian. The turn 3, you go for Will-O-Wisp into the Zacian, plus Heatwave to break the substitute. Yes, with the Charcoal, even in rain, you break the substitute of Zacian, and you should be able to just get a burn off. However, if they somehow protect, next turn, the idea is to go for Max Quick plus Will-O-Wisp into the Zacian with your Calyrex. If they just knock out a... kind of complicated to talk about so many options, but like, the idea is, set up Safeguard, turn 2 plus Parting Shot into Torkoal, break the substitute if it's on Zacian, burn Zacian at all costs. If you burn the Zacian, and you got Incineroar in the back, the Calyrex Ice Rider will be able to stand up against it. Otherwise, because +1 Behemoth Blade actually knocks out Calyrex, but if you burn it and you actually intimidate the Zacian as well to give it +0 instead, Behemoth Blade do not do a lot anymore, and you're going to be able to stand up against Zacian, and rest of the team of the Zacian is completely unable to deal with Calyrex Ice Rider. This is the main idea. If they somehow knock out your Incineroar turn 1 though, while you fake out the Zacian and set up Trick Room, Shadow Stick plus Max Coiticization from KO, and then just win the game. If they got Among Us though, Max Quick plus Safeguard is kind of safe to go for as well. And I feel like Max Quick with the I feel it should be enough to just get Zacian anyways, because a lot of the, from what I've seen, a lot of Zacians are max speed, max attack anyways, so like you should be able to just knock out. And even if it doesn't knock out, the +0 Behemoth Blade does not punch at the Calyrex, and it procs the weakness +0 as well. And like, Lapras after Max Quake doesn't do all that much damage to your Calyrex Ice Rider as well, so you should be able to clean up afterwards. Especially with Torkoal in the back just waiting, like. So again, Zacian Thunderous Slate is much more simple. You just fake out the Zacian, set up Trick Room, Parting Shot the Zacian, will lose the Thunderous, switch to Torkoal before Parting Shot, and win the game with Eruptions. As simple as that. But of course, these game plans are like trying to picture like a basic game plan. As I've said, the game plan is set up Trick Room, set up Safeguard, and then burn Zacian at all costs, so it's no danger to your Calyrex Ice Rider. That is the main idea in this matchup. But I feel the Zacian team is just so flexible. Opponent might just like switch around their threats, switch the leads, and he might be in some trouble again. So unfortunately, it's not like this game plan will not be applicable to every game, unfortunately, and you are kind of in disadvantage. But the idea is burn the Zacian, burn the Zacian. Repeat after me. Right, and Yveltal, you'd be surprised, you would be probably thinking like Yveltal is a horrible matchup, but the basic idea, again, is to cripple the Yveltal, then like cripple the Yveltal before Mimikyu switches in. And after Mimikyu switches in, set up Safeguard to prevent the Among Us spores, set up Trick Room, and then let your Calyrex Ice Rider wreak the havoc. Very rarely Yveltals nowadays have full play, so self-broken the weakness plus is not that dangerous. And the idea is really just like try to attempt to spore the Yveltal, which might be a tall task, but this game plan when I see here just kind of talks about that. So like Parting Shot on Yveltal is plus protecting is safe, switch to Mimikyu with Parting Shot while protecting Among Us, then you set up the Safeguard or Trick Room, depending on what you want to do first. You probably let the Among Us Feint Flamax Airstream plus Flail Blitz, but then you use just switch in the Calyrex Ice Rider and you just kind of win the game. It's that simple. It's really that simple, because you Parting Shot at the Yveltal, you can Max Quake the opponent's Incineroar turn 3 with your Calyrex Ice Rider, and yeah, the Max Darkness from Yveltal will no longer be any threat to you. So yeah, but watch out for the Megas. Really, Safeguard is important. Actually, this note down here is actually from previous game plans, but oh well. And now, enter the last section of the video, counteractions. So how do you counteract this archetype reliably? So I got a bunch of tips for you, and what you can add to the team. So Dynamax Water type plus Ferrothorn is incredibly irritating for this team to deal with. The idea is that most of the time this team doesn't have the Torkoal, as I've mentioned many times before. And if they got Dusclops with Pain Split, you are going to be able to win the... You're going to be able to win the late games with on timer in game at least with Leech Seed. It's kind of hard to explain, but you're going to win the on timer on in game. So their best counteraction for this is Incineroar, but with Rain and +2 defense, you can set up easily in their Trick Room. I mean with Iron Defense. Flare Blitz does only 30% to your Ferrothorn, and Body Press one-shots Incineroar one-shots back. What does the Finny on opponent's team do against your Ferrothorn? Nothing, really. What does the Calyrex Ice Rider do? Not much, really. It doesn't do all that much, and you can get Leech Seeded, Body Press for massive damage. And if you got, like, basically the idea is, like, Lapras is bulk and can be procced with weakness policy, so Max Knuckle doesn't do all that much favor to the opponent from Calyrex Ice Rider. Kyogre, Palkia, and Tapu Fini are not hit. I mean, Palkia is hit normal effectively max Hailstorm, but Kyogre and Tapu Fini have to be max Quaked, which if they Dynamax, Max Quake from Calyrex Ice Rider will not do that much damage. So yeah, and Max Geyser can actually one-shot the Incineroar as well, so like, it's really irritating for them to deal with Dynamax Water type, plus Ferrothorn with Iron Defense, and Leech Seed is a great late game tool as well, since Mimikyu will not do anything against it, and even if Calyrex Ice Rider gets like +2 attack, it won't be doing much to +6 defense Ferrothorn. And like they can, like if the opponent close combats, it will do like 40% and then he just one-shot back with Body Press. It's like very, very irritating for opponent to deal with this type of thing. Another idea is to run Incineroar plus Grimmsnarl. So the idea is, again, irritate the opponent, because if you got taunt on Incineroar, opponent won't be able to set up, the Calyrex team won't be able to go for a Mingus shenanigans and won't be able to go for a Mimikyu shenanigans either. And you set up Reflect, so the Max Quake, Max Knuckle, Max Steel Spike, Max Hailstorm won't do much damage. You parting shot the Calyrex, and you can switch immediately back turn 2 after you parting shot to Intimidate it again, nullifying the weakness Ballistic Beasts. You just irritate the opponent incredibly with this combo alone. Pretty much this combo alone prevents any kind of like sweeps from Calyrex Ice Rider happening. And if Calyrex Ice Rider sweep is not happening, this team got very few options of what to do offensively. Tapu Fini can try to set up something, but Light Screen, Spirit Break, Parting Shot, or even Snarl on Incineroar, again, bunch of options you got, are going to completely shut that option down of Fini. And if you got like some Steel type as Celesteela that can actually, alongside Reflect, Parting Shot, Intimidate, you will actually add a Steel Spike boost with +1 defense, that Calyrex is not doing anything to you. And you got a bunch of options, like, I would say, like, Solgaleo, Ferrothorn, Celesteela mainly, Katana are great options to go for Steel Spikes, and if you just manage to do that, it's just ridiculous for opponent to deal with, and opponent won't be able to win as a result, because they have serious lack of damage, and it just, like, slowly chip them away. If you got Leech Seed on Celesteela, I think it's kind of a niche move right now, but Leech Seed on Celesteela could be great as well, just to win against this matchup, so yeah. If you got Incineroar plus Grimmsnarl already on a team, and you're running dual screens, consider, I mean, this combo alone should you win, but if you have trouble, just add in a Steel type for extra irritation. Torkoal plus Charizard, again, this is, how many times have I talked about Torkoal plus Charizard actually being useful on some team? Yeah, the combo really has some great anti-meta potential. Too bad Torkoal is just kind of like useless outside of the Trick Room, but the idea is Charizard one-shots the Incineroar with Max Quake, Charizard one-shots the Calyrex Ice Rider with G-Max Wildfire, Charizard one-shots the Incineroar with Max Quake, Tapu Fini gets one-shotted by the Max Overgrowth. So these are the options you got for Charizard, but you can like you can delay the Dynamax with Heat Vibes as well. And against like Mimikyu, that set up Trick Room, you might say like, oh yeah, Mimikyu set up Trick Room. So Calyrex Ice Rider wins against Groudon plus Charizard, but Groudon? No, we got slower than Calyrex Ice Rider Torkoal, which 2-KOs Calyrex Ice Rider very cleanly with Max Flare or Eruption. So yeah, this team just kind of like does a pincer attack. Opponent cannot set up Trick Room because of the Torkoal, but if they don't set up Trick Room, Charizard will just massacre this team and tear it to pieces. So yeah, and if they got like a Mingus plus Mimikyu lead, you can go for like Heat Wave plus Eruption as well. Heat Wave kills the Mingus on its own, Eruption finishes off the Mimikyu. You got great advantage with Torkoal plus Charizard all alone as well. Metagross plus Spectre is like, or Blue Swing user, like, same applies for Solgaleo. The team has major trouble against it, and you will pretty much force out the counteractions to this combo to be immediately let. So you can, for example, take advantage of that, like, psychologically, similarly, as I'm going to talk about in Mingus. But the idea is that Spectre plus Metagross breaks this guys, then you KO the Mimikyu with Max Steel Spike. Very easy. Quite an easy game plan, right? Max Quake goes Incineroar, Max Quake actually Max Steel Spike one-shots Fini, Max Steel Spike also increases the defense, so even if you don't run Bulldoze, opponents Max Quake, Calyrex Ice will think twice before Max Quaking the Metagross. So yeah, but if they go like a Mingus tournament, it's like, yeah, like you go to a Mingus with Bulldoze plus Max Steel Spike, then they have to bring their Torkoal in, but then like if they haven't got Torkoal, they are screwed right now. And like, this is the idea of Spectre plus Metagross. Spectre can also burn the Calyrex Ice Shard if it switches in, and it can go for weird plays like go for a Snarl, or we can actually switch to something like Incineroar as well. And if you're unsure as if you can check Torkoal, you can go with Grimmsnarl to set up Light Screen turn 1 instead. And like, that as well just makes you incredibly resilient to the onslaught of the Torkoal. Or you can just like, after you bulldoze plus KO the Amoonguss, you max guard the Metagross, wait for opponent to, for example, knock out the Spectre with Eruption plus Shadow Sneak. If opponent does not, you get Snarl off. If it does, you switch to Grimmsnarl, set up Light Screen, and suddenly you just take the Eruption, and you just max quake the Torkoal for the one shot, and then it's just so over for the opponent before they can even do anything. It's just ridiculous how this matchup can be swinged back and forth in your favor, of regardless what opponent does. And if you got Incineroar in the back, like, Calyrex Ice Shard will definitely not do anything against Reflect plus Incineroar intimidated attack. So like, yeah, that's the idea. Amoonguss, forcing Feeny to be brought into the game. This is like more psychological weapon than direct counteraction, as I write in text here. Mimikyu doesn't carry Safeguard very often, so the idea is if you somehow force the opponent to go Trick Room mode, and he got Amoonguss, they will bring Feeny. And you can take that to advantage and not bring Amoonguss, and bring additional different Pokemon that could give you advantage against the Pokemon instead. So like, Feeny is fairly passive Pokemon, and they got basically like 3 passive Pokemon, Incineroar, Feeny, and Mimikyu. Not very passive. Flare Blitz can do great damage, Mimikyu can burn, Feeny can go for Calm Minds, but it's like they're mostly passive, and you can exploit that with just literally having Amoonguss in team preview, and bring something else to counteract the other Pokemon. And reversing the Trick Room plus Strong Restricted is another example of what you can do. I would say it's kind of like, for example, Trick Room Mimikyu plus Calyrex is a bad example because the team got Incineroar. But the idea is like, Kyogre is best example of that, like, or Soul Glow, basically any steel type. A lot of restricteds are a good example of that. If you can somehow reverse the Trick Room turn 1, and then, like, for example, weaken the Mimikyu plus Calyrex, or Amoonguss, or Incineroar, or whatever, so opponent cannot set up the Trick Room second time. Then you reverse the, then you allow opponent to deal with your Pokemon. Then you reverse the Trick Room, and then you finish off the Mimikyu plus Incineroar plus Amoonguss plus Calyrex, so they don't set up the Trick Room second time. How do you do that? Water Spout, for example, do so much damage that second Water Spout opponent won't be able to really withstand. Second, Astral Barrage, Mimikyu won't be able to withstand. Second, I would say even second, like a Max Quake, Incineroar won't be able to withstand. Like, for example, you just weaken the Incineroar, then you, like, yeah, it's kind of hard to set up. It's like more, I would probably say get creative here, but the idea is to just weaken the Mimikyu, so you KO it after the Trick Room gets reversed by something like Porygon 2, Dusclops, your own Mimikyu. Whimsicott can do just fine, I'd say. But yeah, it being a surprise is optional as well, so yeah, like, the idea is to just do massive damage and, like, to just prevent the second Trick Room, and Strong Restricted help you with that. Again, one last time, Kyogre, Shadowrex, Zacian, Ice Rex, I would say even Groudon if you set up, like, a Swords Dance. It's just, like, very dangerous for opponent to deal with all of a sudden. So, like, you just gotta get creative with your own Restricted and plus reversing the Trick Room, but Porygon 2 does this job the best. And I think with that, we are done for today. Hopefully you learned something new, and I'll catch you next Metagame Monday. See you later.